Every year, it's the same story. A new Call of Duty drops and players rush to grab it, despite the same old bugs, unfinished content, and frustrating mechanics. But what's behind the cycle? Why do players keep falling for it year after year? And why do these shady tactics from Activision keep working? In this video, I'm going to pull back the curtain and take a deep dive into what's really going on with Call of Duty and the gaming world at large. And we're not just talking about what's happened in recent years, but also why fans keep getting sucked into the unfinished games. What's the psychology behind it? Why is Call of Duty and gaming in general still so successful even with all the criticism it faces? I'll show you how clever marketing, inconsistent updates, and a masterclass in hype and frustration create the perfect storm for Activision to boost their sales. And I'll also break down why players just can't seem to stay away no matter how many times they get burned. So, after taking a look at how Call of Duty and Activision have operated over the past few years, let's dive into the recurring patterns and psychological mechanisms that make this strategy so successful. We will start with the annual cycle and repetition of patterns. What we've seen over the years is almost a perfect pattern. You know, every year a new Call of Duty game drops, often with tons of marketing campaigns, beta phases, and a hype launch that attracts a massive player base. Yet, the releases are often incomplete, plagued with bugs, performance issues, and missing features. Still, the game rakes in massive sales. So why does this happen every year? The answer lies in the psychological principles behind the cycle. Each new release sparks hope for improvements, which often turn out to be short-lived, but players can't seem to shake the expectations that this time will be different. On number 2, we got the psychology behind the hope bias. The so-called hope bias plays a huge role here because it means players continue to hope that the next Call of Duty will be better despite their negative experiences in previous years. You know, this hope drives them to buy the game each year, believing that last year's issues will finally be fixed. Even though players know new bugs and frustrations are likely, the hope bias kicks in. You know, people want to believe in the best and are waiting for the game to finally be fun again, and the marketing hype only amplifies this feeling. Next on the list, on number 3, we have intermittent reinforcement, the addiction loop. Another crucial psychological factor is the theory of intermittent reinforcement, and this theory rooted in behavioral psychology and explains how unpredictable rewards can have an addictive effect. In the case of Call of Duty, it means getting irregular but powerful rewards, you know, like those rare perfect game moments, new updates, or seasonal content. And this creates an addiction loop where players constantly chase the next reward, even knowing they might get disappointed. And the unpredictability of rewards makes the game even more enticing because you never know if you'll hit that sweet moment or if it's going to be another letdown. On number 4, we have FOMO and social pressure, which is like the urge to be part of it. And it is also another psychological concept. And that's the fear of not being part of the last trend. And in the gaming community, this effect is especially heightened by social factors. You know, when everyone around you is playing the latest Call of Duty, it almost feels like you have to jump in to avoid being left out. And seeing your friends dive into new COD can make you feel like you're missing out. And that fear is a huge motivator for players to buy the game, despite its known issues. The fear of not being part of the conversation or missing exclusive content pushes many to make that purchase. On number 5, we have marketing and beta phases, the artificial expectations. Because another tool in this process is marketing, which Activision uses masterfully, to be honest, because beta phases are often designed to build massive anticipation, and players who engage in these betas invest their time and energy into the game and develop an emotional attachment, even when there are still bugs and problems to address. And the hype generated by marketing campaigns, exclusive early access phases, and big influencer collaborations makes players feel like they're part of something special, even though the final product often doesn't live up to the expectations. Next up is same old story, why don't players learn? And I think this is the question that most people ask out there, especially veterans like me, because I know I sound like a broken record, but the last Call of Duty I bought was Black Ops 2. The rest was trash, you know? The annual cycle of players buying the game, despite its flaws, can be explained by these psychological principles. Every title is marketed as a return to form with big promises only for the disappointments to follow soon after. Yet players keep coming back, hoping that this year will finally be the year things turn around. And the constant repetition of this experience keeps the cycle going, even if the results are always the same. And if you ask me, that's where Activision's strategy becomes almost sinister. They no fans will put up with the flaws because of these psychological triggers. We have hope, fear of missing out, and intermittent reinforcement. And they exploit the human desire for improvement and the social pressure to be part of the latest trend driving up sales. And last but not least, we got a system of frustration and reward. Ultimately, Call of Duty operates within a system that constantly builds frustration, but also sprinkles in small rewards here and there. Sounds familiar, right? And whether it's a new update, a new weapon, or a fresh event, players are lured back in time and time again. And this constant mix of frustration and reward keeps players hooked, despite knowing they'll likely be disappointed at some point. Also, guys, I would really appreciate it if you could take a moment to like the video if you found it helpful and leave a comment, because it helps boost the algorithm. And I know a lot of people say it, but it's true. And for those of you interested in seeing more content like this, feel free to subscribe so you never miss out. And I think most of you guys already understood what I'm talking about, but Activision's strategy, along with the tactics of other major publishers in the gaming industry, doesn't rely on delivering perfect products. It's always and only about creating a system that taps into the psychological needs of players. And this is what we've talked about: the hope, fear of missing out, intermittent reinforcement, and the social pressure, because they ensure the cycle repeats every single year. Okay, guys, but now let's get real for a second. And when we talk about the psychological manipulation in the gaming industry, especially when it comes to companies like Activision, we can't just gloss over the ethical side of things, right? This isn't just clever marketing, this is straight up exploitation. The way these companies play with our emotions, our hopes, and ultimately our wallets is beyond shady. And they will sell us incomplete, buggy games year after year, and then, surprise, we get the finished product through updates. But the issue here is we are the ones paying for it. And it's a broken system. Players fork out full price for a game that's essentially in beta mode, literally. Instead of getting a polished product, we get a patchwork of features with new updates trickling in every few weeks, fixing what should have been done at launch, if you ask me. And how is that even remotely acceptable? And don't even get me started on microtransactions. It's like they're putting a price tag on every little thing that should be in the game from the start. And take Warzone, for instance. The concept was brilliant, sure, but the execution was a complete mess. We had bugs, performance issues, and missing features. Yet Activision kept raking in money as if nothing was wrong. They sold us the promise of something amazing, but we were left with a game that constantly needed fixing, And here's the worst part: we paid for it again. We tested it for them. We made them rich while they threw out broken updates and left us feeling like beta testers. Because this isn't about getting the game to work. It's about using us to finish their product for them. And how is that fair? You're being sold a product that isn't finished, but you're expected to love it anyway because of the hype. It's this cycle of disappointment that keeps dragging us back year after year. You know what the biggest issue is? Despite all the frustration, despite all the flaws, we keep coming back for more. And why? Because we're nostalgic for the good old days, for the games that worked, and for the Call of Duty that we used to love. We've been conditioned to expect less than what we deserve. And it's frustrating, but it's the reality we're stuck in, guys. And we really have to talk about this. Why does this keep happening? Why are we, as players, accepting this constant cycle of empty promises? It's time to face the truth, and have a real conversation about the ethics of these business practices, because we deserve better. I always say it in my videos. And we need to stop letting companies take advantage of our love for the game. And it's time to demand change and not just sit back and wait for the next update that apparently breaks the game and requires a restart. And this is where I wanted to take a moment to talk about the roller coaster of Call of Duty's player numbers and what's really going on. And I'm talking about the Steam charts. Imagine you're a passionate Call of Duty player and you've been through the highs of a new release, the excitement of fresh content, and, let's be honest, the inevitable decline that follows. It's the cycle we all know too well, but let's take a closer look at the numbers. What's really happening behind the scenes, and why does it always seem like the hype dies down faster than a nuke dropping on shipment? It all started in October 2022, the launch of MW2 and Warzone 2.0, and the hype was real. We saw the player numbers explode. Right in October, we had 103,000 players, but November, we had a massive 115% increase, reaching 223,000 players. And here it was clear everybody was hopping on the Call of Duty train. But December hit and, well, we were down 20.34% to 178,000 players. And this is the classic pattern we've seen before. The release brings in the masses, but once the newness wears off, the drop-off is almost inevitable. From January to March, we saw those early numbers plummet. We lost almost 42% in January, another 10% in March, and it's like clockwork. The post-launch erosion. As casual players step away, the hardcore fans remain, and no major releases, just balance patches and minor updates. You know the drill, things just stagnate. April to June, the numbers stabilized, but we're not seeing any significant recovery. We're in the waiting for the next thing phase. And then came July through September, a series of drops with a tiny spike in August, almost 7%, thanks to some summer events. But honestly, it's the calm before the storm. The community is focused on what's next, and the next Call of Duty title is announced, and beta tests roll out in September. And teasers can only keep people excited for so long before the actual game is released. And you guessed it, boom, we're back at it. October 2023, an increase of 24%. November was almost 40%, and December an increase of 8%. And the release of new Call of Duty title did what it was supposed to. Massive player influx, but even with those impressive numbers, we see a decline after the initial hype. Nothing new here. And who would have guessed? January saw a dip, almost 14%. By May, it was down again by 14.83%, and the game's starting to show its age. The community's not as engaged as it once was. Balance updates and seasonal content don't have the same magic as a brand new title, and people are getting restless. They want new, they want fresh, and the community can't be kept afloat just by patching up old content. And of course, we have the next build up to the next big drop, because we start to see the return of some hype, but it's more of a slow build. By October, it's up by 23% again, thanks to marketing and a new Call of Duty release. And here we go again. The cycle continues. November rolls in and boom, we're at a whopping plus 96%. But by December, we see a massive drop of almost 40%. And it's the typical Call of Duty cycle. A spike with a new release, then a sharp drop as the excitement fades and the community moves on, waiting for the next wave of content. And as you can see here, it's a familiar story. We have new releases followed with huge spikes, and every time a new title drops, we see player numbers skyrocket. Then we have a quick fade, and if we are real here, the initial excitement dies off very fast. We're talking 20 to 40% drops within a month or two. Then we have seasonal events that help, but don't really save Call of Duty, because holiday events or new modes provide temporary boosts, but don't last long. And then we have the downward trend overall. Despite all the peaks, Call of Duty's numbers are on a general decline. It's like the community's interest is slowly fading since years. And we also have the need for new content. Call of Duty relies heavily on fresh content to keep players engaged, and without it, the numbers drop. If you search for Call of Duty on Google, you can narrow the results by setting a specific time frame. And I've always looked at periods from October to November of the following year, like from October 2022 to November 2023. And this helps in understanding trends and developments rather than just focusing on the current hype. And yeah, who would have thought? But I have to admit, I didn't play Modern Warfare 2 and Modern Warfare 3 at launch. However, if you look at Reddit and other forums, you'll quickly realize that the spectacle is pretty much the same every year with each new Call of Duty title. It's exactly the same as this year with Black Ops 6, and I find it fascinating because even though I haven't paid much attention to Call of Duty since Black Ops 2, there are patterns that can't be denied. And if you don't see that these games are basically copy-paste, then you're sadly mistaken. And the standards for quality must be ridiculously low for people to keep supporting it, so low that Activision makes billions every year. Because just think about it, they're working on a brand new game called Call of Duty every year, and unless there's yet another new engine, Infinity Ward, Sledgehammer Games, and Treyarch have to get together and create a brand new game from scratch. And the studios can't stand working with each other. And this means they're not building on any existing engine or game. No, every new game is built from the ground up with studios that operate completely differently. And that's no wonder every Call of Duty has its own signature. And the games often feel like garbage because everything is just thrown together and they all work in their own ways, but for the same game. And that's probably why Call of Duty is constantly in an identity crisis, because no one really knows who the game is meant to appeal to or what Call of Duty even stands for anymore. At the end of the day, it's all about the new bundles and Warzone that hold everything together. And guys, what we're seeing here isn't just a series of disappointing player outcomes or fluctuating numbers. It's a pattern, and one that's based on a systematic strategy, an unethical strategy that's become the backbone of the gaming industry. And every year, the same old game, the release of an unfinished product, constant bug fixes, the addition of microtransactions designed to artificially boost player engagement, and ultimately, the recycling of garbage. The same mistakes, the same disappointments, and the question is, why do we put up with this, guys? Why? And sure, there are still players out there who enjoy Call of Duty, but the truth is, Call of Duty isn't what it once was. For anyone who remembers the golden days, the golden era, Modern Warfare 2, 2009, that set the standard, at least for me, and it's hard not to cringe when looking at the serious decline. I'm saying this from experience, right? As I prepared for this video, I was looking into the new Modern Warfare 2022, and I had to face the harsh reality. The game is a mess. It hurts, it truly hurts to see such a pathetic excuse for the amazing game that was released in 2009. It's a slap in the face to everything that once made this franchise great, if you ask me. It's almost sinister, it's like a cycle of disappointments and unfinished games that are hyped up every year with a marketing spectacle knowing full well that the issues will never really be fixed. It's a game with the players' expectations, and every time we fall for it. But why? Why don't we learn from the past? Why do we accept the same trash year after year? Just because the hype and the marketing make us believe it's going to be different this time? Well, it's manipulative tactics. Preying on our natural instincts, the hope that maybe, just maybe, this will be the game they promised us. It's time to break the cycle and demand what we truly deserve. Games that shine because of quality and not marketing strategies. And Call of Duty has become a shadow of its former self, and it's high time players woke up to the fact that we're worth more than the endless rehashing of the same trash year after year. And there you have it. Another year, another cycle of disappointment. And it's honestly exhausting, but here we are, still falling for the same tricks. And we're not just talking about a game here. We're talking about a system built on recycled hype and empty promises. And Call of Duty could be so much more, but it's stuck in this loop of fix it later and pay to play nonsense. So why do we keep doing this, guys? Why do we let ourselves get swept up in the same marketing gimmicks knowing that nothing's really going to change? Maybe it's because we hold on to the hope that things will be different next time. But deep down, guys, we all know it's just another year and we're getting the same half-baked product we've come to expect. But it is time to wake up, guys. We deserve better. We deserve games that live up to the hype, not ones that rely on the same tired formula to make a quick buck. You know, if Activision can keep selling this recycled garbage, maybe it's time we stop buying it. And I think this is what people say since years. They say it every single years and people still keep buying it. Anyway, guys, let's keep the conversation going. Drop your thoughts below and let's discuss that. Merry Christmas again. Today is the second day of Christmas, and as I mentioned before, I wasn't sure if I'll be uploading this year, but here we are. I've got a lot of ideas, and today I felt like this particular issue needed to be addressed once again. And it's something everyone knows about, but it still feels like it needs more pressure, you know, because gaming is not gaming anymore, and we just need to talk about it because I think it is very important. And I want to hear what you all think about where things are headed. Take care and see you in the next one.